Hello and thanks for joining us for our mid-morning edition of Arirang News. I'm Mark Broom. Let's kick things off with a look at the day's headlines. A North Korean delegation crosses the border again, this time with Olympic athletes who will join the unified inter-Korean ice hockey team. The delegates will be touring Olympic facilities in the south for the next 3 days. The Trump administration slaps new sanctions on North Korea aimed at stopping the regime's nuclear missile ambitions. Washington broadens its list of targets, adding Chinese and North Korean individuals and companies. Plus, the South Korean economy grows 3.1% last year, surpassing the government's target. However, the economy unexpectedly contracted in Q4 from the previous 3 months, the first time that's happened since the global financial crisis. Our top story this morning, the Olympic diplomacy between the two Koreas. North Korea's inspection team and 15 members of their women's ice hockey team arrived in South Korea about 30 minutes ago. The players will start training with their South Korean counterparts as they prepare to compete as a unified team. The delegates, they're going to be here for the next 3 days to inspect Olympic facilities in PyeongChang, Gangneung and Seoul. Ji Myung-gil starts us off.
A North Korean delegation of 8 members led by Yoon Young-bok, the Deputy Director General of Pyongyang Sports Ministry, arrived in South Korea on Thursday morning. This is the second time for Yoon to step on South Korean soil after making a similar visit in 2014, ahead of the Incheon Asian Games that year. The delegation is joined by a 50-member ice hockey team, and they used the Gyeonggi Line train route on the western part of the peninsula to cross the border and enter South Korea. This is the second inspection team from North Korea to arrive in the south after Hyun Song-wol, the leader of the Samjeon Orchestra, led the first team last weekend for a 2-day visit. Yoon's inspection team plans to look around accommodations, the venues for figure skating and ice hockey, and the athletes' village, all located in the city of Gangneung, which is hosting the ice events of next month's PyeongChang Winter Olympics. On Friday, the team will move to PyeongChang to check out the press center, the PyeongChang Olympic Stadium, the slopes of the Alpensia Resort for cross-country skiing, and the Yongpyeong Ski Resort. On Saturday, the team plans to inspect accommodation facilities in Seoul for a 30-member taekwondo demonstration team, as well as the concert hall in one of Seoul's broadcasting stations. They are expected to head back to North Korea in the afternoon. The North's second inspection team comes as the two Koreas released a statement on January 9th, agreeing that the North would send athletes, a cheering squad art troupe, a taekwondo demonstration team, and journalists to the PyeongChang Winter Olympics. Ji Myung-gil, Arirang News.
Now, the head of the International Olympic Committee has confirmed that the Russian athletes banned from the PyeongChang Winter Olympics had serious indications of doping in their history. Thomas Bach's comments came after 3 top Russian Olympians, including speed skating star Viktor Ahn, were banned from competing despite having no publicly disclosed doping violations. To this, Bach said an IOC review panel took many different sources into consideration, including any available DNA analysis and the biological passports of individual athletes on top of previous drug tests. The IOC boss said that while the excluded athletes did not indicate definite evidence of doping, they were under suspicion or there were other factors that led to their exclusion. Bach added that the decision to invite only a number of carefully screened Russian athletes had been a balance. South Korea's athletes are counting down the days until their once-in-a-lifetime experience of competing at an Olympics in their home country. And with the fun just over 2 weeks away, the South Korean team got together on Wednesday and pledged to do their country proud on the world stage. Won Jung-hwan with the details.
Nearly 220 people, including athletes and staff who are part of the South Korean national Olympic team, gathered in Seoul on Wednesday for their official launch ahead of the upcoming 2018 PyeongChang Winter Olympics. Government officials and previous Olympic medalists also attended the event to encourage and show their support for Team Korea in the first Winter Olympics hosted by the country.
We all know that every one of you have come a long way to be here. And since these Winter Olympics are held here in South Korea, we all know that you will be under great pressure. But we know that you will give your all in the Games. And so we encourage you to show the public your best efforts.
The number of South Korean athletes who are set to compete in the PyeongChang Winter Olympics stands at 146. And including staff members such as coaches and physicians, the total is close to 220 people who will head towards PyeongChang next month. Their goal is clear, to give their all in their best during the Games starting February 9th. South Korea is aiming to win gold medals in PyeongChang 2018 and rank within the top 4 in the medal race.
My goal for this PyeongChang 2018 Olympics is to obviously compete and do the best that I can do with my abilities. Of course, every athlete wants to go out there and win gold, win even any of the medals and be on podium. That's one of the good reasons why we are all here, but it's also that we all love the sport that we do.
Wednesday's ceremony featured South Korea's chief delegate for the 2018 PyeongChang Winter Olympics Games, Kim Ji-young, as a flag bearer of the South Korean flag. But after the International Olympic Committee held a meeting last Saturday, it was decided that the two Koreas will march in the opening ceremony as one delegation. And as such, there will be two flag bearers, one from the south and one from the north. The two Koreas will march together under the Korean unification flag, making the first joint Korean march into an opening ceremony at an international sports event in 11 years, and the 10th joint march overall. Won Jong-hwan, Arirang News.
Now, we have official confirmation that Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe will be at the PyeongChang Winter Olympics, and his visit could be more than just a few hours at the opening ceremony. Abe says he wants to hold talks with President Moon Jae-in while he's here in Korea to convey Japan's stance on the issue of its wartime sexual enslavement of Korean women. Seoul hopes the visit will aid in efforts to develop a more forward-looking relationship with Tokyo. Moon Gon-young reports.
The governments of South Korea and Japan have been discussing Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's visit to South Korea for the PyeongChang Winter Olympics, and we welcome Japan's decision to officially announce the visit.
The Blue House remarks come in response to Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's announcement that he would attend the PyeongChang Olympics in South Korea next month after weeks of speculation that the Japanese leader would skip the visit.
If the situation allows it, I want to attend the opening ceremony of the PyeongChang Olympics. In 2020, there's the Tokyo Olympics. I want to attend the opening ceremony of the PyeongChang Olympics, which will also be held in Asia, and cheer on the athletes.
Abe's announcement brushed aside concern that he would not take part due to an ongoing bilateral feud over a 2015 agreement on comfort women, a euphemistic term referring to the victims of Japanese sexual enslavement of Korean women before and during World War II. Under the controversial deal, South Korean President Moon Jae-in's predecessor and her conservative administration agreed to finally and irreversibly end the decades-old dispute in exchange for Japan's apology and contribution of a little over $9 million to a fund set up to support the victims. The new Moon Jae-in administration declared the deal flawed.
일본이 그 진실을 인정하고 또 피해자 할머니들에 대해서 진심을 다해서 사죄하고 그리고 그것을 교훈으로 삼으면서 다시는 그런 일이 일어나지 않도록 국제사회와 함께 노력해 나갈 때 그러면 할머니들도 그 피해를 용서할 수 있을 것이고
We also want to hold a bilateral summit and convey Japan's stance on the Comfort Women Agreement, while also communicating the importance of the Japan-South Korea-U.S. cooperation in maintaining strong pressure against North Korea.
No, the Blue House plans to maintain its own stance on the issue of Korean victims of Japan's wartime sexual enslavement, while also seeking close cooperation with Japan so that Mr. Abe's trip this time around could lead to the development of a future-oriented relationship between the two countries. how the two leaders work out their kinks and put their heads together to solve another huge issue facing them, North Korea's nuclear threat. The entire world will be closely watching from here on out. Moon Go-young, Arirang News, The Blue House.
Now, U.S. sanctions against North Korea keep coming thick and fast. The Treasury Department has announced new punitive measures on 24 entities and individuals linked to Pyongyang's nuclear and ballistic missile programs. The move comes as Washington remains deeply concerned about the threats posed by the unpredictable regime. Lee Seung-jae with more.
The U.S. Treasury Department said in a statement on Wednesday that it sanctioned 9 entities, including 2 Chinese firms, 16 North Korean individuals, and 6 North Korean vessels, in order to systematically target those financing the Kim Jong-un regime and its weapons programs. Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin, who was present at the Davos World Economic Forum, added that the U.S. is also targeting quote-unquote illicit actors in China, Russia, and elsewhere, with links to the North's financial networks, calling for their expulsion. The sanctions target Beijing Changsheng Trading and Dandong Jiangsheng Trade, 2 Chinese companies accused of exporting a combined total of more than $68 million worth of goods to North Korea, as well as 5 North Korean shipping companies, 1 North Korean electronics company, and the North Korean Ministry of Crude Oil Industry. Individuals listed include 10 representatives of North's Korea Ryambong General Corporation, which is involved in specializing in the regime's defense acquisition and support of its military-related sales. The latest sanctions come about a month after the Treasury blacklisted 2 senior North Korean officials who are involved in the regime's ballistic missile program, as Washington continues to tighten the screw on Pyongyang amid the increasing threat to the U.S. mainland. Meanwhile, President Trump's National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster continued to stress the seriousness of North Korea's threats, stating that the danger is growing and that the North has become a grave threat to the United States. Calling it a preferred approach to the North Korean weapons issue, the U.S. looks to continue its sanctions on the North, hoping the pressure will force Pyongyang to abandon its weapons programs. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Now, U.S. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson spoke with his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov on Wednesday, stressing the urgency of implementing UN sanctions against North Korea. In a phone call with the Russian Foreign Minister, Tillerson discussed last week's meeting in Vancouver, which dealt with North Korea's nuclear and ballistic missile programs. Russia, which was not invited to that meeting, is one of 5 veto-wielding permanent members of the UN Security Council. Moscow supported all 3 UN resolutions that were adopted last year following the North 6 nuclear test and 3 ICBM tests. South Korea's economic growth expanded last year on the back of strong exports, surpassing the 3% mark for the first time since 2014. According to the Bank of Korea on Thursday, South Korea's economy grew 3.1% in 2017. That's up from 2.8% in 2016. But the country's economy contracted 0.2% on quarter in the final quarter of last year, slowing from bumper growth of 1.5% in the third quarter, which was the fastest expansion in 7 years. On top of the strong base effect, the Bank of Korea said fewer working days over the extra-long Chuseok holiday held back industrial production. Now, a young Korean tennis player is winning fans down under and around the world with his stunning performances at the Australian Open. Chung Hyeon smashed his way into the semi-finals of the Grand Slam on Wednesday and sets up a clash with a true legend of the sport, Roger Federer. Our Kim Mo-gyun with more.
On Wednesday, South Korean tennis player Chung Hyeon beat American tennis sangren in the quarterfinals of the Australian Open, becoming the first Korean to reach the semifinals of a Grand Slam tournament and the first Asian man to make it to the semifinals of the Australian Open in 86 years. The match at Rod Laver Arena in Melbourne took 2 hours and 30 minutes, with Chung winning 6-4, 7-6, 6-3. In the Association of Tennis Professionals rankings, Sandgren was ranked 97th going in and Chung was ranked 58th, but the win is expected to push Chung into the world's top 30 players, which would break the record for Korean men set in 2007 by Lee Hyung-taek, who ranked 36th. At the age of 21, Chung is now the youngest Grand Slam semifinalist in 8 years and the lowest-ranked Australian Open semifinalist in 14 years. The Korean tennis star earned prize money of nearly $711,000 for entering the semifinals and some $40,000 for the quarterfinals, which amount to more than 40% of his accumulated prize money before the Games. With the latest victory, Chung will face world number 2 Roger Federer on Friday. If Chung wins that match, he will become the first Asian player to enter the men's finals in the Australian Open. Kim Mok-yeon, Arirang News.
Now, switching gears now, in a major technological feat, Chinese scientists have successfully cloned monkeys for the first time by transplanting donor cells into eggs. Scientists hope the monkeys can pave the way for medical research for human diseases. Our Park So-yeon reports.
In a world first, Chinese researchers have cloned 2 healthy monkeys by using the same technique that produced dollar sheep 2 decades ago, breaking the barrier of cloning primus species. The cloning of primus was long considered to be fundamentally more difficult than cloning other mammals such as sheep and horses. 2 monkeys named Zongzong and Huahua were born in November and December of last year at a laboratory in Shanghai after 79 attempts. The Chinese Academy of Sciences said the procedure was technically challenging. Scientists removed DNA containing nucleus from monkey eggs and replaced it with DNA from the monkey fetus. It's the first time this technology, called somatic cell nuclear transfer, has been used to clone non-human primates.
In 2016, we got 127 egg cells, 109 reconstructed embryos, and nearly 80 good embryos that can be used in transplant. We transplanted them into 21 monkeys and found 6 got pregnant. Of that, 2 without fetal hearts aborted in the process, and another 2 had a gestational sac only, but we found the fetus and fetal hearts in the last 2.
A researcher said the cloned monkeys will be useful to study genetic diseases, including certain types of cancers, metabolic and immune disorders.
The barrier of cloning primate species is now overcome. In principle, any primate, including human, can be cloned. But our purpose of producing cloned monkeys is purely for human benefit, for medical purposes. We see no reason of cloning humans. The society, for ethical reasons, will not permit cloning of humans, and this is never within our consideration to extend the technique to humans.
The study suggests that human cloning could technically be possible in the near future, raising serious ethical concerns. This watershed discovery will potentially lead to a brave new world of medical research and spark heated debate over cloning another primate species, humans. Park So-yeon, Arirang News.
Now, for a look at the stories making headlines around the world, we are going to start with the fall of the former USA gymnastics team doctor. Larry Nassar was sentenced to 40 to 175 years in prison for abusing young female gymnasts under the guise of medical treatment. For more on this and other news, let's turn to our Noah Adam. So, Adam, these sexual harassment scandals that rocked Hollywood has now spread, it seems, to the world of sport, with more women speaking out after their extremely uncomfortable encounters.
That's right, Mark. The sentencing followed days of harrowing accounts from about 160 of Larry Nassar's victims. They include some of America's top gymnasts, including gold medalists Ali Raisman, Simone Biles and many others. On Wednesday, after a week-long trial, Nassar pleaded guilty to 10 counts of sexual assault against girls and young women. The presiding judge proudly read out her ruling, saying it was her privilege.
Sir, I'm giving you 175 years, which is 2,100 months. I've just signed your death warrant. I find that you don't get it, that you're a danger. You remain a danger,
She added his actions were, quote, precise, calculated, manipulative, devious and despicable. To add to Nassar's woes, before serving the Michigan sentence, the 54-year-old must first serve a 60-year federal sentence for child pornography crimes. He is also scheduled to be sentenced next week on more assault convictions in Michigan's Eaton County. Nassar turned to the courtroom gallery to make a brief statement saying that the victim's accounts had shaken him to his core and that no words could describe how sorry he was for his crimes. But Judge Aquilina read a letter that Nassar had written to her that raised questions about whether he was truly remorseful. The courtroom gasped when she read a passage in which Nassar accused his accusers of fabricating allegations to get money and fame and that he had been manipulated into admitting his guilt. Islamic State militants have killed at least 3 people and wounded more than 25 others in an attack on the aid agency Save the Children in eastern Afghanistan. Officials say a vehicle packed with explosives was detonated outside the charity's office in Jalalabad on Wednesday. Several men then stormed the office with AK-47s and rocket-propelled grenades. All the attackers were said to have been killed after an hours-long gun battle with Afghan security forces. Save the Children said it has temporarily suspended all of its operations in the country, adding it will resume aid work after it is safe to do so. Over in Brazil, former Brazilian President Lula da Silva has been banned from running in elections this year after the appeals court upheld his corruption-related convictions on Wednesday local time. The court's verdict was delivered in the southern city of Porto Alegre, where thousands of his supporters gathered as da Silva vehemently denied the corruption charges, stating that he's a victim of political witch hunt to stop him from running. This comes after he was found guilty of accepting a luxury apartment and refurbishments worth more than $1 million as a bribe to secure lucrative contracts for construction firm OAS with Brazil's state oil giant Petrobras. With the latest decision, his initial sentence of 9 years and 6 months has been increased to 12 years and 1 month. There is just over a year now left until Britain officially leaves the European Union, but it appears that a full separation from the bloc will not be seen until the end of 2020. The UK's Brexit negotiator David Davis, however, told a parliamentary Brexit committee on Wednesday that the 2-year transition period after March 2019 will not be what he called a deferral of Brexit. He was answering questions from fellow Conservative MP Jacob Rees-Mogg, who said Britain would effectively stay in the EU until 2020 as a vassal state, a claim which Davis flatly rejected. Davis, however, did confirm that the UK would be subject to the European Court of Justice and will also pay into the EU budget. He also said the UK would follow new single market rules, but added that Britain would be free to sign trade deals with other countries, something that is not allowed whilst being an EU member. Free movement of people, goods and money is also expected to be extended until the start of the year 2021.
Good morning. Today is going to be just as cold as yesterday. Cold wave advisories have upgraded to warnings for most of the central region, while the rest are still in a grip of big freeze, including Busan and Ulsan, with lows plunging down to below -10 degrees Celsius this morning. In fact, a dry weather warning has been issued for those 2 major cities, while the rest are under the dry weather advisories, including here in the capital. And taking a closer look at today's daily highs, Seoul will only make it to -8 degrees Celsius. Daegu will climb up to -2 degrees, but you know that sharp winds will only make it feel colder than these actual temperatures. So we'll have to wait until the middle of next week to see readings go back to the seasonal averages. With that, let's take a look at the international weather for viewers around the world. While most of us in South Korea will have another freezing but sunny day, most cities in North Korea will also have exceptionally cold temperatures all day. And as for the rest of Asia, those of you in Beijing will also have very cold temperatures today, but expect to have normal air quality this morning. Meanwhile, those in Melbourne will get a taste of living on Australia's west coast as humidity and heat settle in. Heading to North America, in the Chicago area, hundreds of traffic crashes, at least 3 of them fatal, were reported Wednesday as freezing rain glazed the roads, and it's forecast to be another freezing day on Thursday. And as for South America, Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro will have a wet day, so be sure to have an umbrella handy. Taking you to Europe, much of France has been lashed by downpours throughout January. Rivers across France were splitting their banks, with 15 departments still on flood alert. But more rain is expected for Thursday. And lastly, to Africa, Cairo and Cape Town will have a windy Thursday. And that's all the weather update for now.
Well, that's where we're going to leave the news for now as well. Our next bulletin is coming up at noon Korea time. So until then, goodbye.
A village full of exciting sports. It's PyeongChang.